Hi, Janet.
Hi, Elaine. So nice to meet you.
You too. So thank you for joining Yet Stands Inc. And this is our Thrive, Flourish, and Prosper Survivor Conversations, where we talk about um, sexual assault, but overcoming that, share resources, tools, things like that. And yeah, you and I, we've never met, but has it been, I know it's been at least a year at
Yeah, at
least
least.
that
Yeah.
we've been in contact.
hmm
Yeah. And
Yeah.
yeah, and familiar with your organization, Courageous Survivors, which we'll talk a little bit more about later on. But I kind of wanted to kind of just start out with the experiences that you had, with sexual assault, sexual abuse. And was that something that happened in your childhood?
Yeah. For me, it started, well, what I remember is from the age of 4. I often say that I doubt that when you're in that, especially my abuse being that it happened at the hands of my father. It's like it didn't just magically start happening at 4, I don't think. But
Hmm.
from what I can remember, my memories start at 4. Yeah, I'm the oldest of 8.
Wow.
Yeah, and my siblings, there's 4 boys, 4 girls. They were like step ladders. So from a very young age, I was responsible for caring for them. My mom had hepatitis when I was young, so she was in and out of the hospital. With that, she was in and out of the hospital having babies every year. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I was home alone a lot and left to care for them. My dad was an alcoholic and
Mm-hmm.
a drug addict. He was a very angry alcoholic.
Mm-hmm.
He was a rager. Being that being the case, there were a lot of you know, shady characters, I guess you could call them, drug addicts,
Mm-hmm.
stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that around our house. So we weren't, we didn't have a healthy environment at all.
Yeah.
Um, Obviously.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah.
And my mom was an alcoholic, but she was a different kind of alcoholic. She was a kind of she would get into victim mode, I guess
Mm.
is the way to say it.
Mm-hmm.
She she was an expert at guilt trips for sure.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
To feel sorry for me and, I need everybody else to take care of me kind of thing. And my dad there was a lot of domestic abuse. So she was in a tough situation as well.
Mm-hmm.
I have learned, you know, to have a lot of compassion for her. And
Yeah.
and as a kid, that compassion was unfortunately thrust on me at too young of an age,
Mm-hmm.
not knowing how to deal with that. Of course, I became very enmeshed and very, wanting to rescue her, that kind of situation.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, kind of go through this kind of quickly because I have, there's a lot, but
Mm-hmm.
I was always looking for a way as I got older. I was looking for a way to be away from that environment, and it ended up, like I anytime I had the opportunity to spend the night at a friend's house, I would do so. Anything, and there was no, how do I say this, functional discipline, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like from a very young age, I mean, I could be out till whatever. There were no rules. There was no curfew. There was nothing. And I used to be really envious of the friends that I had that, the parents would say, call me when you get home. And even as an adult, when we
Mm-hmm.
visit, my first husband and I, when we'd go visit my mom, it was like, no news is good news. And I always kind of longed for that, well, call me when you get home safe kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, I was always like looking for that compassion and care
Mm-hmm.
that I just felt I wasn't getting.
Yeah.
And I did feel loved by my mom, which I think helped me tremendously. Um, when I was 9, I think it was New Year's Eve, my parents always went out. And by this time I had, yeah, I think all the siblings were, I had all my 7 younger brothers and sisters, and they would go out very often drinking until the bars closed, and I would be there, taking care of them. New Year's Eve was no exception. And so we went to bed one New Year's Eve, and just to give you an idea, they came in at 2 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock in the morning, whatever it was. My mom kind of stumbled to bed, and basically my dad came and pulled me out of bed and handed me over to his the guy that he bought drugs from, because he
Mm-hmm.
owed him money, and said, here's, my dad was very drunk, very
Yeah.
high, very,
Mm-hmm.
here's my daughter for payment. And basically this guy raped me in front of my dad.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the reason I mentioned, I was abused a lot by my family, by relatives, by the people that hung around our house.
Mm-hmm.
That incident changed me inside.
Mm-hmm.
It there was something about the worthlessness, the feeling of worthlessness,
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
I was a commodity to be handed over as some kind of payment.
Right.
I went back to bed, and I remember specifically like numbing out my mind, like I
Mm-hmm.
was white, and I
Mm-hmm.
loved that feeling. And
Yeah.
I mean, I had often done that, just
Mm-hmm.
automatically during the
Mm-hmm.
abuse. But this particular instance, I learned that I could do that myself.
Yeah.
And it started a pattern of me being able to survive,
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
stuff that I was surviving.
Yeah.
And it helped save my life, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
so then I got involved with this church when I was 11. I started going to this church with a friend of mine in the neighborhood that had just moved in, and it was a bad situation. At first I thought it was great. I mean, all these people just like, they seemed really nice, and they were, seemed to be normal to me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it was a very shame-based religion, very
Mm-hmm.
fundamentalist, very, I don't even know what they call it nowadays, but it unfortunately compounded that feeling of I wasn't good enough.
Mm.
I needed to not cut my hair. I needed to wear sleeves below my elbows. I needed to do this and do that, or I wasn't good enough for God.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that, not even realizing it at the time, the shame that I felt at not even being a good enough little girl for God
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
huge.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
while the time that I did go to that church, which was up through high school, I think it was like my junior year, I started breaking away from it. I ended up being raped by one of the members of the church, one of the youth leaders, and he was an elder, and I was just, I think perpetrators. One thing I've learned is perpetrators know who to go for. They
Mm-hmm.
know that, if you have a choice between the pastor's daughter and this other little girl who it comes from a broken home and is poor and doesn't have anybody to tell,
Mm-hmm.
kind of, that's going to be a better target. And
Mm.
I was, and that I was chose to be that target by this guy. He,
Mm-hmm.
side note, he did end up in prison.
Oh, okay.
Not for what he did to me, but
Oh.
unfortunately, he continued on and did it to other little girls. So,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but nobody believed me at the time, and yet I still kept going back for more. I still
Mm.
kept going back for any ounce of love or compassion or anything that I could get from anybody. So,
Mm-hmm.
anyways, I ended up getting married. Had two wonderful children. Thought everything was good, but as is the case with this kind of trauma, I never I never told my ex-husband about any of my trauma. I had thought I thought I had created this life without trauma. I thought I had
Mm-hmm.
created this life that was going to be so far removed from all of that that I was
Mm-hmm.
going to be okay. But
Mm-hmm.
it was there. It was
Yeah,
eating me. It was eating underneath the surface and in
absolutely.
everything I did.
Yeah. Yeah.
That marriage did not last. I say it didn't last. We were married 15 years,
Oh,
but
wow.
um, after the first few years of it, we weren't close, and
Mm.
it became my life. And let me see.
Now, Janet, let me ask you, what were some of the ways that that the trauma showed up, like in certain behaviors or?
What the ways that it showed up with me was I was very, very needy.
Mm.
I was either I was either very dependent upon somebody.
Mm-hmm.
For example, my ex-husband. I felt like I would die without him,
Mm.
kind of situation when we were dating.
Mm-hmm.
Like, or I would go to the other extreme, which was I don't need anybody.
Yeah.
I'm strong. I can do it myself.
Yeah.
And I was never in that middle ground.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was,
Mm-hmm.
independence or,
Mm-hmm.
total dependence.
Yeah.
And,
Either or.
you know,
Uh-huh.
and that's a painful place to be.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think the low self-esteem
Mm-hmm.
is what contributes to that, because I thought that to feel good about myself,
Mm-hmm.
I needed to get all of that um love or whatever from others.
Mm-hmm. The
It was,
validation and
yeah, it wasn't
yeah.
inside of me.
Right.
It was
Right.
never so in saying that, it would never, when you do that, it doesn't last.
Mm-hmm. Right. Exactly.
It lasts while you're in the presence of that person or while that person's giving you whatever they're giving you.
Yeah.
The minute you're away from it,
Mm-hmm.
you feel
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
empty
Mm-hmm.
and lonely, and yeah.
Yeah. When did you come to kind of realize that,
It
that's
took me a long time. It took me divorcing my husband and meeting my current husband. We've been married like almost 25 years now.
uh,
And meeting him and going through that real honeymoon phase of, here's this wonderful man who seems to love me for me, who I've told all my secrets to, and
mm,
still thinks I'm a worthy person. So it was
mm,
still coming from the outside, but it started that feeling of I'm okay. Like I
mm,
maybe I'm not broken. Maybe I'm not this
mm.
horrible, dirty little girl that I thought I
Yeah.
was.
Yeah.
And but then, even then, it took a lot more. It took a
Mm-hmm.
lot more. It was about 9 years, maybe 10 years into our marriage, where I
Mm-hmm.
was diagnosed with cancer, actually.
Oh.
And just going through that and going through some other difficulties that we had. I had been on antidepressants that whole time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it,
Mm-hmm.
through my attempts at therapy, through my attempts at trying to get help,
Mm-hmm.
but I had still never really dealt with that deep trauma.
Yeah.
And so into this wonderful marriage, and finding out that the trauma started to come up in that marriage
Mm.
in ways of drinking every night, of um, needing to not feel, uh,
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
know, and even, I started to feel suicidal again. I've been
Yeah.
suicidal so many times in my life. That started
Yeah.
coming up again. Um,
Mm.
but honestly, it wasn't until those things came to a head when we moved to Arizona and I was in this place of being suicidal again that I knew I needed help. And I was
Mm-hmm.
blessed enough to be guided by a couple of really good therapists
Mm-hmm.
to a place called the Meadows, which was
Okay.
a trauma treatment center. And I went in,
Oh.
it's a residential
Oh,
uh,
wow.
center, and I was there 45 days. And
Wow.
it was the first place and I was in my 50s
Mm-hmm.
at this time. So,
Wow.
it took me all those years to get to a place where I was dealing head on with that deep trauma.
Mm-hmm. I
And
didn't realize that they had trauma treatment centers. I mean, I've heard of course, for drug addicts and alcoholics
well,
but I didn't know that they.
yeah, I call it a trauma treatment center, even though
Mm-hmm.
other people do initially go there for they can go there for addiction, they can go there for alcoholism, they can go there
Okay.
for whatever. However, the Meadows philosophy is that the majority of people that are dealing with addiction issues or alcohol issues or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
there's some deep trauma underneath that.
Trauma. Yeah, for
And
sure.
so their belief is that for that, it's not just, abstinence of whatever
Mm-hmm.
substance or whatever medication it
Right.
is.
Right.
It's dealing with that trauma that's underneath. And
Yeah.
to actually sit there in a group and do a timeline of my trauma that took 2 days to
Mm-hmm.
do. And it was a small group, like 6 or 7 people. And to have these people, like I remember saying at the end of the first day, wait till you guys hear what I tell you tomorrow. You won't like me then, and
Wow.
they still did because
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
that it wasn't me as a person. It was what happened to me, but I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know that. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember when the counselor said to me, it was when inner child was first introduced to me. And she said,
Mm-hmm.
what do you think of Janet at like 4 years old? And
Yeah.
with venom, I said,
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
hated her.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and now, like I've been in, you know, really a really good trauma therapy for almost 6 years now,
Mm-hmm.
outpatient, obviously. And um, I don't feel that way anymore. It's still
Mm-hmm.
very difficult.
Yes. Yeah.
I have her picture right here at my desk, and I can
Wow.
look at her and not hate her.
Wow.
Um,
Yeah.
and, and that's for me where the healing really started happening.
Yeah. Yeah. So now you said the Meadows. Is that in Arizona?
Yeah, it's in Wickenburg,
Okay.
Arizona.
Okay.
Although they have opened up, I think they have a place in Texas now.
Okay.
I'm not
Okay.
sure of the inpatient, how many inpatients
Mm-hmm.
they have, but they have lots of outpatient centers now.
Okay.
They're
Okay.
opening all over the place. So
Very good. Very good. Yeah. Because I mean, I had to go through a rehab, but it was drug rehab, and for the most part, that really kind of getting at and digging in. And I was there for 3 months and really kind of getting in there and digging at that trauma, that didn't really happen because the focus was,
Right.
like you said, the abstinence from the look, you just can't use any more
Yeah.
drugs, and how are we going to help you, do that?
Yeah.
And that was the focus. So yeah, I found that I did definitely had to go through, a lot more, therapy and,
Right.
and things like
Yeah.
that to, yeah, to really address those things. But, of course, the big step though was, not to use anymore,
Yeah, for sure.
yeah, yeah. And you mentioned that you were suicidal. Did you actually, attempt suicide, or was it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I had several suicide attempts when I was, I'd say in my late 20s,
Mm-hmm.
early 30s.
Mm-hmm.
And I was at 5 or 6 different psych hospitals, and just nothing was working.
Yeah.
Nothing was helping,
Mm-hmm.
because what happened is, well, I think I just wasn't ready.
Mm-hmm.
I think
Mm-hmm.
and what would happen is my first psychiatrist that I saw, this was in the early 90s, and he did therapy. They did they did therapy at that time. It wasn't just meds, where now
Mm-hmm.
psychs just do,
Mm-hmm.
psychiatrists just do mostly meds. But um, there was a transference issue that got in the way, because he was old enough to be my dad.
Mm-hmm.
And he was the first person ever in my entire life that listened to me
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
validated me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Uh, and I wanted him to be my dad.
Oh, yeah.
And it just got in the way. So
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
I'm so happy that happened, though, because it led me to strength. It led me
Mm-hmm.
to the strength to get through that, and to realize the awareness
Mm-hmm.
that these tears right here are not because of that psychiatrist. They are because of the dad that I wish I
Mm-hmm.
had.
Mm-hmm.
And in that awareness, as it is with just about everything, once you have that awareness, you
Yep.
can work on it.
That's right. Yeah.
You can
It's
start doing
key.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So,
Um, what became of your family? Their siblings, mom, dad? What became of?
well, my dad committed suicide at age 44.
Mm,
My mom died of emphysema when she was 50.
mm,
My brother, my eldest brother, who was right under me, so we were very close in age. After my dad, about 2 years after my dad died, my dad had started my brothers on drugs
mm,
and everything. So they were very they
mm,
had it was not a great relationship, obviously. But
mhm.
my brother Billy, I don't think he knew how to be without my dad, so he walked in front of a train,
Oh my
um,
gosh. Wow.
and killed himself. He was 24.
Mm,
I have another brother who OD'd at 41.
mm,
I have my youngest brother who
mm.
had cerebral palsy. He died a few years ago
Wow.
from his illness. And then I have one brother that's still alive that doesn't speak to me because he was in his addiction, and I had to cut it off because I couldn't
Mhm.
have my life. I have all my sisters are still living. I'm only in contact with one of them because once I wrote my book,
Mhm.
even though I didn't mention names,
Mhm.
they just are in their denial is there. And in saying that, they know what kind of family we came from, but I don't
Mhm.
know what their experience is. They're a lot
Mm,
younger than me, and we had 8 kids.
mm,
So their childhood was very different than my childhood.
mhm.
So
Yeah.
I don't know. I have one sister who ran off to Arkansas and then Tennessee with the guy that raped me when I was 9.
Mm.
So and they once I wrote my book, I got all this hatred from them.
Mhm.
What
Mhm.
what's wrong with you? That
Mhm.
blah blah blah. So
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's their protection. And
Mhm. Yeah.
that's their life. That's their choice. So I'm not in
Yeah.
touch with really any of them except for
Yeah.
one. So
Yeah. Yeah. So what about today for you? I don't know. I don't know if I want to call them triggers, or I don't know. Are there still maybe after effects,
Oh
that you
gosh,
find?
I think I deal with triggers every day.
Mm,
I deal with um I deal with the horrific fear of this, of connection, of being
mm,
seen. Because one
mhm,
of the ways I survived was to shut down,
mhm.
um, become numb, invisible, all those things that brought
Yeah,
me away from the light.
yeah,
And
yeah.
now that I have kind of stepped out of the light and am doing what I can for other survivors, and that involves being seen, that, and over the
Mhm.
years of therapy, the last several years, I've learned to create a really wonderful network of people that I just adore and love being
Yeah.
around. And but at the same time, I love all of that and have a passion for all of that. That survival instinct is what it
Mm,
was. The way I
mhm,
survived was to shut down, become numb,
mhm,
and become
mhm,
invisible. And because
mhm.
that is a survival instinct, it's probably never going to leave me,
Yeah,
but I
yeah.
can manage it. I can walk through the fear.
Mhm.
And that's why
Yeah.
I named my nonprofit what I named it, because courage isn't, as you know very well, it's not
Mhm.
being without fear. We have fears every
Yeah,
day. And I have
absolutely.
fears every day,
Yeah,
but you walk through them because
yeah,
you know it's gonna be okay
yeah, yeah,
up here.
for
And
sure.
then
Mhm.
you get an experience, you get a feeling in here that, "Oh, yeah, okay, I didn't
Yeah,
die." I
yeah.
didn't get rejected,
Mhm.
I didn't whatever the fear is, and
Right,
then you have the
right.
courage to do it again. So,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
how I live right now.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
You're right. I mean, it really is something that just kind of stays with you. Um, but the saying, knowledge is power. And so
yep,
knowing that and being aware of that, and
absolutely.
having some, I don't know if you want to call them tools or, resources, or to bring yourself beyond that, and to
Yeah,
bring yourself back into the present moment, and to just live,
yes,
and just
yes,
yeah, yeah, face
exactly.
life on life's terms. And
Yep.
like you said, it doesn't kill you,
Yeah.
but
Well,
it really is a daily thing.
the
Yeah.
dissociation that happens,
Mhm.
which I've called numbing, I've called spacing
Mhm.
out, whatever, but,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's something that is honed from a very young age with this kind
Yeah.
of abuse, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Even when you don't even know you're doing it, and I
Yeah.
remember very early on in my trauma therapy, he had me do these, identify 3 things outside of the room.
Oh, yeah.
Really quickly, and then identify 3 things inside the room. And it got to be where, after a couple years of doing that, he would see me it happening, and if I was talking about a certain thing or being triggered by a certain thing, and to bring me back, he would just kinda go
Mm.
like this, like, and I would know that meant look around the room and
Oh,
do the
wow.
thing, right?
Yeah. Wow.
And, you talk about as it is today. Just a couple weeks ago, I think it was, I was in there and oh my gosh, I went into it really badly. Like I couldn't get 2 words together. And it was because I had been talking to this lady about a situation that really triggered something in me back to when I was a kid, and I
Mhm.
hadn't really realized that's what was going on, and I had to do that 333 thing again, which I haven't
Wow.
had to do in ages. And so
Wow.
sometimes it just comes back
Mhm.
with a vengeance, and then it goes away.
Yeah.
And
And then it goes away. Yeah.
and then it's fewer and farther between, and you just get
Yeah.
better at it.
Exactly.
You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
practice. So
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a good one. So if you feel yourself, that's kind of like a grounding type of
exactly.
exercise, right? To bring
Yeah.
bring yourself back. Know that you're safe.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So now you mentioned your book, and that's "Don't Expect Me to Cry," right? That's the name of the book. So what is that? What does that title mean?
You know, I think, um, for me, I had one of the ways, that's one of the ways I survived my childhood.
Mm.
And this book is about, my
Mm-hmm.
experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, I'm going to get through this. Somewhere inside of me, there is this little spark of hope.
Mm.
I call that God.
Mm-hmm.
That was what got me through.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like, okay, I'm doing it a little bit right now. Okay, I'm just going to be totally.
You're okay. You're disconnecting a little bit.
Yeah, but yeah, it was like I didn't cry. That's how I became. I cry all the freaking time now. And so I think that was where that title came from. It's like you are not going to take my soul.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
You are, you all of these people that are doing all these things to me and trying to take my very soul, it's not going to happen. And so that's where that came from. But I have this idea that rolls around in my head, that I want to do another book, and I want it to be about all my recovery and all the hope and all the things that I've been so blessed to experience since then. And I think I want to call it Expect Me to Cry. You know why?
Wow.
Because I have learned that it's okay to cry.
Wow. Yeah.
I still apologize, even in the therapy office, for God's sake, where they do expect you to cry.
Yeah. And you're saying,
I'm like, sorry. I'm sorry. No, you don't have to apologize for feeling your emotions.
Yeah. I remember early on. Yeah, I remember early on going through therapy, and I had no clue that this was happening. And the therapist said to me, so I'm telling my story and I'm telling, all these things that have happened and I've been through and all. And she said to me, she said, do you realize you're smiling? And I said, huh? She said, you just told this trauma story with a smile on your face. Right. And that was the distance. Like it was literally like I'm telling a story. I'm not really telling I'm telling a story about this girl. Right. And I'm totally disconnected from, and I'm telling it with a smile on my face. Yeah. And I just thought, wow. And so I remember that because crying still even today is hard for me to do. But then really, I didn't cry. I didn't cry. And like you said, just refused to cry, but it was more of a just being so disconnected. Right. This stuff didn't really happen. Not to me. It happened, to somebody, kind of thing.
Well, that's how you survived, right? I mean,
that's how I survived. Yeah.
You had, I think we had, a lot of us do become so disconnected from who we are.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one thing. In fact, can I read something to you?
Sure.
This is a book called Watering the Soul. And it's by Courtney Peppernell.
Okay.
And I just love it. It was recommended by a friend of mine. But we don't know who we are sometimes. We don't know what we like. We are so disconnected. And this this reminded me of my journey. And I feel like it's a really hopeful thing. It says, she was learning to love herself the long way around. By waking up every morning with gratitude in her heart, even if some mornings it felt like the sun was barely shining. She was learning to love her books piled high in the corner of her room and her bracelets scattered across her windowsill. She was learning to love listening to the rain every time it stormed and the way she stirred her coffee 3 times before the first sip. She was learning that the birds singing in the afternoon and the sound of her wind chime calmed her in ways that steadied every beat of her heart. All the little intricate things from morning to night were all the things that made her who she was. And in the process of learning to love these things, she learned to love herself.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And that to me sums up my journey at this moment. I'm
Yeah.
trying to allow myself
Yeah.
the good
Yeah.
things,
Yeah.
and that's difficult.
Very difficult. Yeah. Yeah.
That's really difficult.
It is. Yeah. And though I have found that I think there are a lot of things that I would say that, I have worked through and I have kind of, gotten over, if you will. But
Right.
there is still, I find especially the things that happened when I was really, really young,
Mm,
because I took on those coping mechanism and defense mechanism and all of that. I mean, it's almost like another hand, like it's part of me,
exactly. Yeah.
and it really has taken me. I just had a birthday a couple of months ago, and I'll tell you, I don't know, but God just started, revealing to me, on my birthday that, there's still, some things there. There's still this
Yeah.
limb there, and it's like
Right.
it's become your belief system. There are things that you
Great
say, things that
description.
you do. And so I'm having like this whole nother like awareness and this whole nother journey to, and I'm like,
Yeah.
does it ever end? But
I know. I know. But
yeah.
I guess we can reframe that, so to speak, just like, yeah, maybe it doesn't end, but the journey gets easier a little
Yeah.
bit,
Yeah.
and it can be fun.
Yeah.
Some of it can be fun. And
Yeah.
when I learned that I could still live life and have some fun while doing this work,
Mhm.
that was a good day,
Yeah. Yeah. You're
you
right.
know.
You're right.
And some days are easier than others,
Hmm.
obviously,
Absolutely.
you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. So Janet, tell me some about Courageous Survivors. So that is your nonprofit organization, and we can find you at courageoussurvivors.org. What does Courageous Survivors do? What's your mission, your purpose?
The whole mission of Courageous Survivors is to support other survivors of sexual abuse and assault
Mhm.
or sexual violence. You know, in the ways that survivors need to be supported, and the way the basis for that is obviously my own,
Mhm.
my own life, and
Mhm.
and the things that I feel like I needed, the
Mhm.
things that I felt like I couldn't get.
Mhm.
Um, for instance, support groups. We
Mhm.
just started our first support group last week, and
Wow.
that's been a dream of mine, because when I was in therapy and looking for a group, in
Yeah.
addition to my trauma therapy, I couldn't find one
Right.
that fit, because
Mhm.
they can be, if you don't have somebody facilitating that's very experienced at guiding the group,
Mm.
it can become a very re-triggering, re-traumatizing
Mm.
environment. And that was the case for me. And
Uh-huh.
so I learned by trial and error. So
Mm.
that's been a dream. And
Yeah.
I almost couldn't take it in last week when it actually first started. It was like, oh my gosh.
Wow.
Um,
Wow.
we want to do retreats in the future. We
Mhm.
have lots of resources, which I have a whole list of that I still have to add on there. It's just,
Yeah.
I have like this wonderful board of directors now who,
Mhm.
are just helping to push us forward by
Yeah.
leaps and bounds. And
Yeah.
that's a good problem to have.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm. Yeah. That is great. And Courageous Survivors has been around how long? Several
um,
years, right?
it's been around for, as its own nonprofit, it's been around for 2 years. I
Okay.
did it in December 2020. Prior to that, a few years prior to that, I started a nonprofit called Show Up for Children.
Okay.
I got trained to facilitate the
Mhm.
Darkness to Light,
Mhm.
program and
Mhm.
everything. And then, but yet I wanted to do work with survivors, and it kind of evolved.
Mhm.
I do have a great passion for prevention, obviously.
Mhm. Mhm.
I have granddaughters,
Yeah.
and I mean, it's just like it's there.
Yeah.
But as I went through my therapy, I realized that my own survivor experiences are where the healing was,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
I just felt like that was where I could offer more
Yeah.
at this time. So that's
Yeah.
why I kind of moved it onto its own, being its own entity,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Yeah. 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 Matter of fact, this year I started my Yet Stand Inc. And same reasons really. Um, so I'd like to definitely kind of talk to you offline about some things since you've been
Yeah,
at it a little longer than myself.
absolutely.
So yeah, some things I'm sure that you could probably help
Anytime.
help me
Yeah.
with. Yeah, yeah. Um, so what about NASCA? So National Association of Adult Survivors of Child Abuse. This is an
Yeah.
organization that you're a part of.
Well, yeah, I've been a guest speaker on that show. They have a radio show that goes on, I'm not sure which nights.
Mm-hmm.
And they're a major resource. So they're a major resource for child abuse prevention, child sexual abuse prevention, survivors, all that. I'm not, if I'm really honest, I'm not quite sure what I do as Arizona's ambassador. I think they've been getting their ambassador program kind of trying to get it to work
Okay.
in
Mm-hmm.
a different way. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
not sure what I do,
Uh-huh.
but I do know that they're great organizations.
I actually did a couple of interviews with them, and I've interviewed some of the other persons, that are part
Right,
of.
right.
Let's see, what is his name? Bill.
Yes, Bill Murray.
Bill. I interviewed
Mhm.
Bill, and like I said, several of the other. This is when I was doing a internet radio show,
Oh, okay.
and yeah, and then now it has morphed into this as years have gone on, and technology and all of that is now morphed
Right.
morphed somewhat, but yeah, so I'm familiar with them, and yeah, they are absolutely a great resource.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
And people can get a lot of information, and again, hearing the survivor stories, which I always feel
Absolutely.
like you get so much hope from just
You
hearing
do.
from others that've been there, have done that, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. Um, let's see. So you said you're working. I like the idea that you had of the other book, right? You said expect me to cry. I
Expect me to
love
cry.
that. I'm gonna be looking for that. I'm gonna be looking for that, Janet. Um, so if you could encourage a child right now who they might be experiencing or have experienced sexual assault, sexual abuse, if there's any kind of encouragement that you could give them, what would it be?
I would say that you're not alone, even though you feel like you are,
Mm-hmm.
and don't give up until somebody listens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Because it may not be the first person or the second person, but somebody will listen.
yeah.
And it's so the sooner that someone that you could get help,
Yeah,
the better.
yeah, the
Less,
better.
less,
Yeah,
less
yeah, for
suffering.
sure. For
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, yeah. And would that be the same even to someone, they're an adult and they've
Absolutely.
yeah, pretty much the same,
Yeah.
the same, yeah. Get the
Yeah.
help,
You're not
talk about
alone.
it, work through it. You're
Yeah.
not alone. Yeah,
And I
yeah.
mean, I have felt, I don't think I ever actually was as an adult alone, but I have felt that horrible ache of
Mm-hmm.
wanting nobody near me, but needing
Mm-hmm.
somebody near me.
Yeah,
And it's a horrible place to be because you feel like you'll never, that it feels hopeless,
yeah,
basically. And
yeah.
that's not a good place to be.
Not a good place to
And
be. Yeah,
there is always hope,
yeah, yeah,
always.
yeah. So I want to ask you a little bit more about the support groups. Are
Yeah.
they open, kind of just, how do they open to the public? If I'm
Yeah.
here in Virginia and I need a support group, is it something I could be involved? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So right now, this first group is virtual.
Okay.
So yeah, you could be wherever. We do have a registration on our website.
Mm-hmm.
It when you click on the link to register, it'll ask you a few questions. It's a very short intake form.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what's that?
No, no, no. I just said, uh-huh. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. And this first, they're going to run in 8-week cycles. So like this first group will be 8 weeks, and then we'll start like a new one. Although the people that are in the first group are more than welcome to continue as many groups as they want. But we do ask when people register and join the group that they commit to that 8-week period, because it's consistency that is one of the biggest supports in a group like this.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing
Yeah.
that you're going to see the same faces and connect with the same people. And we do, they're $50 per group
Mm-hmm.
per session. So it's for I can't do math. For 8 weeks times, it
Oh,
must be
okay.
$400.
Okay.
So
Okay.
for the whole 8 week. However, we do have some donors that have donated sponsorship
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
scholarships
Mm-hmm.
for portions and complete 8-week cycles. So
Okay.
we've been able to offer a couple of those to
Okay.
this first group, which is really nice because
Yeah, for
there's a lot of
sure.
people that that can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
And they're meant to be just very hopeful, supportive, tools to cope, connecting with others, sense of belonging,
Mm-hmm.
all the really
Yeah.
positive parts of the healing that will help
Yeah.
people go forward. So
Right. Right. And
yeah.
do you have? Is there a therapeutic side to it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, they're being facilitated by
Mm-hmm.
a licensed therapist.
Okay. Okay.
So, and right now we have, in this first group, we have one main therapist, and then we have another one who's co-leading.
Okay.
But as the interest increases,
Mm-hmm.
we'll have more than just the one group running at the same time. And we eventually want to have male groups.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, it's a female only group.
Okay.
But we will have male groups in the
Yeah.
future and stuff like that. And
Okay.
hopefully have some in-person along with the virtual. I mean, I just
Mm-hmm.
want it to be available,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just want people to get as much as they can. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Well, that is great. So I'll make sure that when I put our video out, I'm gonna put all that information, in there so people, people can know about that. So that's a great resource. Yeah.
yeah, and right on the front page of our website, it says it has a thing where you can click support groups, and it'll take you right to where you can
Okay.
register.
Great.
And registering doesn't mean you're committed. It just means you get to do the intake form and see what it's about.
Okay. Okay. All right. Good. Very good. Okay. Um, that was good. Is there anything else that you might want to say or
Um,
suggest to people or?
I don't know. I would just say that, there's life after trauma,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I didn't know that for a lot of years.
Right.
And I am happy to be able to experience it. So
Yeah.
I know
Yeah.
that's what I hope for every survivor, that,
Mm-hmm.
they
Mm-hmm.
realize that this trauma that happened to us is not us. It's something that happened to
Happened
us.
to us.
It's
Yeah.
not us,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. That's important. That definitely is important. Well, thank you so much, Janet. I really appreciate it. This has been a
Yeah,
great
thank you for having me
conversation.
on here. Yeah,
Great
thank you.
conversation. Yeah. And like I said, I will absolutely be in touch.
Okay,
Yeah,
sounds good.
absolutely. We'll be in touch about some things. And, certainly if there's any way that, my organization, can help or,
Same.
yeah,
Same.
yeah,
Absolutely the same.
definitely. Yeah, definitely touch base. So yeah, thank you so much. So everyone, we have been speaking with Janet Bentley. Her nonprofit is courageoussurvivors.org. She also has a book, Don't Expect Me to Cry. We can find that on Amazon. But I encourage everyone to definitely check out her site and look for the information on her support groups. Again, that's courageoussurvivors.org. So thank you so much, Janet. And we'll
Thanks,
talk again
Elaine.
soon.
Okay, thanks, Elaine.
All right. Bye bye.
Bye.